Speaking of, hello, mister. Well, that was a very nice surprise, wasn't it, VM?
It was.
That was a lot easier than I expected. Oh, there we go. Mr. Tingana himself, with his newly acquired scratch across the top of his nose. Only had that for about a month or so. Looking very full-bellied, which immediately makes me think, where is this kill he's clearly been feeding on? Am I parked under it, VM? I don't think so. What a lovely surprise. I'm truly chuffed. That was as easy as it was. I wasn't expecting it to be. It never is. Except sometimes on days like today when it is just that easy. And he is looking thoroughly peaceful and as if he's swallowed a beach ball. Oh. Has it been a tough few days, mister? Been a long time since we've seen you. This is fantastic. And just look at this, what an incredible sighting for you to enjoy on your live safari experience. If you have just joined us, my name is Jamie. I have VM on camera with me, and that is a Tingana, the male leopard. But before we go into that in a little bit more detail, because this is live, it's happening right here and right now in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. That means that you can send through your questions, and you can do that using the hashtag #SafariLive on Twitter. So let's say you have a question about why this leopard is sleeping, for example. I'm assuming he is sleeping at the moment. Let's have a look. Why is the leopard sleeping? Why does he look so full? All of these are questions that you can send through. Why does the leopard have spots? Would be some possible suggestions for questions you might want to send through. Perhaps you've always wondered the answer as to why he's sleeping and why he's panting like that. Look at it, you can see he's breathing very, very fast. He's clearly got a meal somewhere here, or he has had a meal at some point relatively recently. Look at that belly. This is magnificent. For those of you for whom this is the first meeting with Mr. Tingana, he is the dominant male leopard of most of the area that we drive around in, so we see him probably the most often. He shares a territorial boundary with a massive male called the Anderson male. And there he is snoozing away. He's panting like that because his belly is so full and that digestive process is sort of breaking down the meat very, very quickly that he's just eaten, so he's hot. He's hot and he's panting and his belly is so full that he barely has room to breathe. This is wonderful. The last time I saw Tingana, he wasn't looking terrible, but he definitely wasn't looking his usual powerful self. He'd been mating with a female leopard called Shadow, the daughter of Karula that Taylor's looking for, and he was just thoroughly worn out from the exertions of his previous few days, which is why it is so pleasant to see him looking well and happy and positively chubby. Hey, mister, it's been a while. In fact, the last time I think I saw Tingana was when James was in the Mara Triangle, and he was hunting next to the lodge. So it is very special to see him. There is a... oh, fly. It's good to see I'm not the only one being plagued by flies this afternoon. I've had a fly that's been very determinedly trying to fly into my ear since I encountered those buffalo. It's actually hitched a ride and come with us all the way to Arathusa. It's nice to see that it's not just me. Oh, there we go. One very well-fed, very contented male leopard. Now, when I say he is massive, he is probably around 150 so pounds. So he really is a very, very large boy. Curious one. Very, very good question. Yes, you are absolutely right. This is, of course, the perfect weather for big cat viewing. Hello, my boy. Curious one wants to know if Tingana has to go and remark his territory after the rain. And yes, it's one of the big reasons why, apart from the obvious reasons, we love rain, because it washes away all of the scent marks of the various territorial animals, including the big cats, which is why very often, about a day or so after the rain, You'll see the territorial cats, the leopards and the male lions moving about and scent marking their territory. And since most of the scent marking consists of urine spraying, they do have to go and do it all again from scratch. Now, he will be at some point, in fact, probably this evening, depending on what he's been eating. What has he been eating? I can't work this one out. It must be down in near the water hole or somewhere in there. He's definitely eaten something, but depending on the speed that he finishes it off, he will be up and about this evening, scent marking and giving that incredible call that leopards do, that deep sawing sound. I thought that one was quite good, actually. Wasn't that bad, Viam? Viam's skeptical. Okay, fair enough. Fine, you all do a leopard impression. All right, I'm going to go and reposition to get a better view of Mr. T's beautiful face. While we do, let's head back across to James so that he can explain some of the key identifying features of our loved leopards.
I'm afraid I didn't hear Jamie doing her sawing noise of the leopard, but I'd quite like to hear that. Maybe I'll ask her to do it again. Now, one of the things that we use to identify leopards are the spot patterns beneath their noses and just above the whisker line. So this, if you'll excuse the drawing, is Tingana's mouth area. That can be sort of blood dripping out from the warthog that he's just eaten, and his teeth, if he didn't have lips, would be sticking out like that. Now, what we have is the whiskers, of course, all over here. There they are. And then just above them, each leopard has a unique sort of pattern of spots. And Tingana is known as a 5-5 male leopard, and he's got a kind of arrangement that looks a little bit like this. And this is a very poor representation, but it's just for diagram. So he's got 5 there and 5 there, and we refer to his right, our left, and then his left and our right. And we refer to the left basically as you'd read a book, so 5-5 male leopard. And that's how, if you were driving around here, you spotted a male leopard and you wanted to know who it was, that's often one of the best ways to tell, because those spots don't change. As the old saying goes, David? Leopards do not change their spots. That is correct. Well done. Now, I want you to just be very quiet for a sec. And distantly, you may have heard that is a bearded woodpecker. And we are surrounded by the signs of the spring and the signs that the drought is perhaps about to break. It's quite warm. There's a lot of sort of moisture hanging in the air, and that brings the birds out. There are two bearded woodpeckers tapping on either side of me, and they're tapping.
Perfect timing as the king of the Sabi Sands makes his way down to Red Dam for a drink. Let's go and catch up with him. I've got to go all the way around. So everybody hold on tight as we go and watch him quench his thirst with such a full belly. I'm sure he's feeling particularly thirsty. Luckily for him, he has managed to settle himself right next to a water hole. Our Tingana was the first leopard I ever saw in the Sabi Sand when I arrived here on my job interview. So in a way, he's got quite a special memory attached to him. Where are you going, boy? Oh, there he is. Everybody hold on. Let's hope we don't get stuck in the mud. Let's get a nice view of him around here. Oh my goodness. Let's hope we don't fall into the water. Okay, here we go. The king of the Sabi Sand, indeed. And Xylo in Hong Kong, welcome to the Sunset Safari. Lovely to have you on board. I think it's the first time I've personally heard your name. You want to know if leopards will, or big cats will pant to cool themselves down in the same way that cats and dogs do, especially dogs. And yes, absolutely they do. So if it were a slightly warmer day, if he perhaps was lying in the shade with the sun beating down upon him, he may well start to pant, and you'd see his tongue sticking out, because of course these big cats can't sweat. They've got to cool down in other ways. Our leopards are slightly more resilient to high temperatures than lions. And I've seen Tingana, bizarrely. I mean, it's so funny. You read all of the books and they'll say the chances of a big cat moving around in the heat of the day is very, very slim. I've seen Tingana wandering around when it's well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Here he goes, lapping away. He's clearly very, very thirsty. He's found himself the perfect puddle on the edge of the water. I don't think we should get any closer. I think we might risk getting stuck, which is what I would prefer to avoid. You can see him battle-scarred, scratches under his eye, and of course that large one across his nose. And that's just the price that a dominant leopard pays for being dominant in an area, for ruling over an area. I suspect, though, that scar across the top of his nose, and we'll never know for sure, of course. I suspect, though, that was not caused in battle with another dominant male leopard. I think that was caused in a slightly different way while he was mating with one of the females. Tingana is much sought after in the leopard world, and there was a stage where Karula, Shadow, and a female leopard called Tani, who is Shadow's sister, were all seen mating with him in a very short period of time, and I think that's where that scratch comes from. And I think it was probably Shadow, since we know that he was mating with her around the time that he acquired that scratch across his nose. I could be wrong. It could be that he was mating with Shadow and he actually got into a fight with another leopard to defend her from him. Now, that's a possibility. But leopard mating can get very aggressive, and often the female will turn around and smack the male in the face. I've seen Karula get her claw hooked into Tingana's skin before, resulting in much growling as they attempted to disengage from each other. I suspect that scar might have come from Shadow. Oh, this is one thirsty leopard. Now, for those of you that know that Taylor was out looking for the royal family, for Karula and for her two cubs, Hosanna and Shungile, Catherine, you were wondering if perhaps Tingana is the father of those two gorgeous little cubs. And just by the way, before I go into answering that, there is a three-banded plover wandering around in front of him. Sorry, Catherine. Yes, there is a... Yes. Awesome. How amazing is that? There he goes, giving us the impression of that deep sawing sound. Absolutely amazing. I was hoping he'd do that. I just said to VM, remember the time we saw him in the middle of the day and he'd just eaten and he started to saw? And it goes back to... Oh, flop. It goes back to what we were saying earlier about reinforcing their territorial boundaries, that deep leopard roar. That's what that was all about. That was the leopard roaring. And you can see why it's called sawing. It sounds like somebody sawing through a particularly challenging piece of wood. Sorry, Catherine, you got thoroughly interrupted by Tingana. Oh, flop. Was that exhausting, that whole experience, mister? My apologies. Yes, there is a good chance that he is the father of our beloved Shungile and Hosanna, two 8-month-old leopard cubs that we see on a relatively regular basis and that we have come to know and love. He was seen mating with Karula here. In fact, Catherine, strangely enough, I remember it vividly as sitting in this, probably almost in this exact position, except that Red Dam was slightly lower in terms of the level of water. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm talking about your love life. My apologies. He was mating with Karula, and that was when the Tsalalas chased them off in different directions. So there is a very good chance. But of course, we never know with leopards. Female leopards are mysterious creatures, and they will attempt to mate with as many males as possible. Well, of course, speaking about the amount of water that we have now, having just seen Tingana having a jolly good drink, let's go and have a look at Steph, who has a slightly different perspective. The Prince of Cats is on the move, and it seems as though we timed our arrival perfectly. There's a good chance if we'd come through a little bit later, we might not even have found him, as he starts to move away from the road and across into some dense vegetation. Well, hopefully we can keep up with him. There is another vehicle up at the top of the hill, which is why we're not rushing round to the top. We'll be able to follow as he goes along. So let's just get a view as he wanders up. Here he goes. Look at that massive dewlap. We were talking about the flap of skin underneath his neck. He is a very, very powerful leopard. Okay, let's go and catch up with him. Hopefully he decides to call once again. I wonder if he's on his way back to this kill that I think he must have somewhere. And Nidha, while we reposition, you want to know if leopards will hunt even if they are full. And the answer is yes. And interestingly enough, I wonder if he hasn't come through in this direction on his way to a herd of impala that I saw earlier. So all cats are opportunists, and the fact that they have full bellies will not preclude the chance that they are going to hunt if the opportunity presents itself. They might not be as keen on the whole idea, they might not be as enthusiastic, so they won't actively go and seek out food, but absolutely, if something wanders through. Recently we had Tundi, a female leopard, with 3 separate impala kills at one time. While we reposition to get a different view, Taylor has got a spotted animal of a different kind. Oh dear, poor Ronald. I do hope that he is okay. Meanwhile, Tingana's doing his best possible impression of Ronald, lying on his side, looking thoroughly relaxed. And who could blame him with a belly that full? Those of you who've perhaps eaten a bit too much every now and again on a large family lunch, or perhaps some kind of holiday, you'll know exactly how he feels. That lazy, exhausted feeling. You can see he's also panting still. We were talking about that earlier, and the fact that they do pant to cool down. He's breathing fast, so he's doing a little bit of cooling down through his nasal passages. Other than that, his tongue is inside. It's not too hot this afternoon, and it's actually getting gradually cooler. He's moved away a little bit from Red Dam and found himself a nice, safe spot on a termite mound, or next to a termite mound. And it just makes sense for him to be slightly away from the water's edge itself. Of course, the water attracts not just prey animals, but also other predators. And the last thing he wants to do, for example, is sleep right next to the water and find himself in the path of hungry lions, for example. So he's quite happily settled here, just a little bit further away. It's amazing the natural instinct that these animals have to keep themselves safe. Right now, he could not look concerned at all. Now, the name Tingana, for our new viewers, the name Tingana means shy. And interestingly enough, funnily enough, it used to be Shadow's name until Tingana entered the scene, and there was a bit of a switch around with all of the different names of the leopards of this area. But Tingana, when he initially arrived here, was a shy leopard. And it goes down to a very, very important lesson on the ethical guiding that's been approached in this area, and the way that these animals have been habituated to vehicles. So for our newer viewers that are wondering why we're not afraid, or why the animal isn't jumping into our vehicle, well, it's because they're very, very used to us. And I'll go into more detail later. In the meantime, I think let's go to Ronald. Oh dear, poor Ronald, what a disaster. It's definitely not the way that Ronald's afternoon was meant to go. In the meantime, somebody else is having a much nicer afternoon and is now... Oh. I was about to say is about to get up, but most definitely not. I think we might need to do some maneuvering to get us a better view in a moment. But for now, we've got a view of the beautiful golden fur of this leopard and his massive neck and shoulders. He really is a top-heavy. There is a huge difference in size between the female and the male leopards. The males are basically twice the size of the females. So whilst Tingana is roughly 80 kilograms, so around, actually over 100 and... I would say 170 pounds. The females are a little bit smaller than that, usually sitting at around an average of 50 kilograms, so about 110 odd pounds. So considerable difference in size. Now, I was talking earlier about why the animals are not dangerous or do not jump into our vehicles. I think that's a bad way of phrasing it. I think that saying they're not dangerous is not a good way of saying it. They can be dangerous. They're wild animals, and we should never forget that. That being said, they're not out to get us in any way. They don't see us in the vehicle as prey, and because they've been treated very, very carefully by different human beings, they are very comfortable with the presence of the vehicle in their space. Right, let's reposition so we can get a nice view of Mr. T's head. Hopefully. Oh, hold on. The game has changed. What you going to do, boy? I'm just going to sit here for one moment just to see where he decides to go. There's no point in heading off in one. There we go, he's up. And he's back down again. That's more convenient, mister. Look at those incredible grey-green eyes of his. Each and every leopard has an individual eye colour, a unique eye colour. You can recognize them just by looking into their eyes after a while. Mvula, for example, another dominant male of this leopard of this area, has got bright blue eyes rather than this sort of greyish bottled green. And each and every individual, I know that James was speaking about leopard spot patterns before, each and every single individual has a completely unique look. Their spots are like fingerprints. And for us, after a while, seeing them regularly, they become very, very easy to identify. It's almost like recognizing your neighbor, your friend, your colleague at work. Each one has a completely individual face, provided you've spent enough time with them, of course. That doesn't come overnight. I think I'm still going to reposition. I think I'm going to work on the assumption that he's actually going to go that way. If he does go anywhere, I think he's going to go that way. Let's give it a go. Try and reposition to see him. Find ourselves a nice spot. Well, Taylor moves away from the giraffe in a rare treat. At this particular location, we don't have to go anywhere. And we can actually sit with Tingana, as far as I can tell, for as long as we like. We have him all to ourselves, and what a stunning afternoon it has been. A reunion with Tingana after a good few weeks' absence. Look at that, he really does look like he swallowed a beach ball, doesn't he? No, incredibly comfortable. I was speaking about the fact that his name was his name means shy, and how shy he used to be. No more. He's obviously become very, very used to vehicles over the course of the years that he's been living in the Sabi Sands, being tracked and viewed by various guest vehicles. And now at this point you can drive next to Tingana. He doesn't even look at you when he's asleep. He is so comfortable in our presence, which is it is a true privilege that we are at that point. Sorry, I've gone quiet for a moment. I'm just listening to alarm calls of go-away birds. There is a nesting pair of Wahlberg's eagles, which is why I'm looking off in this direction. There's a nesting pair of Wahlberg's eagles that flies around here, and I was hoping that they might be around, but I don't think so. So we can go back to checking out Tingana, who looks thoroughly comfortable and almost like velvet, before our imaginary television audiences return. Here we go, curled with a very delicate one foot over the other. I love that pose. Puffing away. Those massive feet of his. And you can just see the power in the forelimbs. And what a spectacular afternoon this has been here in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. My name is Jamie, and this afternoon I have VM on camera with me, and we're looking at one of the most amazing leopards of our various animals that we see. Let's have a look at a Tingana. For those of you who have just joined us, there he is snoozing away, an absolutely massive dominant male leopard. And he is the leopard, I think, the male leopard that we see most frequently on our live safaris. Definitely a special character. That being said, I haven't seen him for a good few weeks, so it is wonderful to catch up and see how he's doing and to observe the good condition that he is in. The flies are bugging him. I know the feeling, Tingana. They're bugging me as well. They keep flying into my ears and into my eyes, so I sympathize with you completely. And they are biting stable flies, which is why he's not letting them settle on his skin. You can see his ear flicking, the odd paw movement every now and again, just those flashes of irritation from our beautiful leopard. But other than that, he is thoroughly content, resting his head against the sandy soil. Tammy, interesting question from you. We were talking before about identifying individual leopards and how familiar they become to us. Now, Tammy would like to know which animal, which leopard has the airstrip running down his back. Well, Tammy, I'm going to have to turn to the assistant of some of our viewers that have been watching these live safaris and know these leopards for longer than I've been working here. So for those of you that are familiar with our leopards, there's a suggestion that it might be quarantine with his airstrip down his back. I have only encountered quarantine twice, so it could well be that I missed that particular feature of him. There's an entire possibility that I did. So for all of you who are familiar with the leopards of the northern Sabi Sands, please let me know which leopard has an airstrip or the look of an airstrip running down its back. VM, do you know? VM's It is quarantine. Okay, that's conclusive. Conclusive from the man himself, who has spent far more time with quarantine than I have. So gross. The fly went straight into my mouth. At least I caught it, that's true. Let's just look back at the leopard while I attempt to find some water to wash my mouth out with. That was so gross, and it's still flying around. Okay, I'm going to recover myself and rinse my mouth out. And while I do, let's go and see if James has recovered from his loss in the tent. Copy that, thank you. Sorry everybody, just have to chat on the Game Drive channel. I'm going to do some repositioning and decide whether or not Shadow's just doing a loop on her way to Tingana. I'm trying to just keep an eye on where she is. While I do that, let's head across to Steph and a millipede. What an amazing scene has played out in front of us here right next to Red Dam on Arathusa. Shadow's gone to lie down in those thickets, so that's where she is at the moment. Tingana, in the meantime, is here, still pretty much in this, adopting the same position he has spent most of the afternoon in. That being said, he did just call once again. I think that there is a good chance, no, I don't think, I know that Shadow knows he's here. I'd actually sort of forgotten that he had called earlier, so I was wondering whether or not Shadow had worked out exactly where he was. Well, now she knows for certain. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have time to see the reunion between our two beloved leopard characters. It could be quite interesting. I'd be very curious to see whether or not Tingana would go dashing off into the distance. That being said, there's a good chance that by tomorrow morning, if they stay here on Arathusa or go on to Djuma, we could have our mating leopards once again. That is definitely something to look forward to. Shadow is still lying down. I'll be listening with half an ear to the Game Drive comms, so I do know that she is still lying down in that drainage line. So it could actually take a long time for her to make her approach to Tingana. But until then, we'll just have to wait for whatever mysteries unfold during the evening and solve them tomorrow morning on the sunrise safari. I don't think anybody, either of them, is in a hurry to initiate this reunion, but it could well happen very, very soon. On that note, I think we are slowly but surely reaching the end of our sunset safari. So it's time to do our goodbyes and our thank yous. So a big thank you to VM for his wonderful camera work as always, as well as to the entire Safari Live crew. Most importantly, a big thank you to all of you. Let's finish off our sunset safari with a view of this gorgeous male leopard, as it is time to say our goodbyes. It would not be the same without all of you joining us on the back of the Safari Live vehicle. So we do thank you for your questions and your comments, and I hope you're all very excited to have been reunited with one of our main leopard characters. And as I said, we will